A future where crime rules the streets.
Contra wasn't just a game. It essentially invented a whole subgenre, blending non-stop high-octane running and gunning with precision shooting and controls with limitations that demand high skill and forethought. The official franchise is now long dead, and with the modern state of Konami in the gaming industry, I do not see it making any sort of return. Fortunately, Konami doesn't have a stranglehold on the formula. There are so many other Contra-likes available, from the early 90s classics to games still being released today. Here are 15 Contra clones so good they rival the original. Gunstar Heroes, 1993. Gunstar Heroes was the direct Sega competitor to Contra, and having played both, I agree that Gunstar is the better game. Developed by Treasure, a studio of ex-Konami employees who finally had the freedom to make the game they wanted without corporate meddling. The biggest hook here is how you can mix and match weapons. You have 4 base types: Force, Lightning, Chaser, and Fire. You can mix 2 types together to create 16 different distinct weapons, allowing for build crafting and creativity. Want a lightsaber? Combine Lightning and Fire. Want a homing machine gun? Combine Force and Chaser. On top of that, it has a bunch of other moves such as melees, wall jumps, freeform movement, etc. And that makes Contra look super stiff in comparison. It has a cute 90s chibi art style that reminds me of Chrono Trigger, and the artwork is cartoony, colorful, and vibrant. You aren't gritty commandos here, you're a Gunstar hero.
Hunt down.
Hunt Down, 2020. Hunt Down is like an 80s action movie come to life. Developed by Easy Trigger Games, Hunt Down is perhaps the pinnacle of this genre. It's just that high quality. It perfectly captures the 80s interpretation of cyberpunk with gothic, crime-ridden city streets where everyone seems to be an armed thug. The gameplay loop here distinguishes itself by being slower and more tactical. You can't just run and gun. You have to take it slow, hide behind cover, and dispatch enemies while making sure you don't receive too much damage yourself. The enemy AI has advanced behaviors and will act tactically and coordinate, not just running straight at you like most other games in this genre. The showstopper here is the absolutely stunning pixel art and graphics. Animations are extremely detailed and fluid. Like when you turn, you don't just flip on the Y-axis, but you have a full body turn animation. The entire game feels extremely cinematic, and it's the highest quality experience you can have with this genre. Blazing Chrome, 2019. Developed by Brazilian studio Joy Masher, this game captures the dusty robopocalypse sci-fi aesthetic of the 90s. It feels like a modern indie game and more like a Terminator-inspired 3D party game from the 90s. You choose between Mavra, a human resistance fighter, and Doyle, a converted Terminator. Robot, battling through a world destroyed by AI. It's a perfect evolution of Contra 3 and Hardcore, adding in hoverbike battles, giant pilotable mechs, and even Space Harrier-style jetpack segments. The controls are well made, featuring a lock button to aid with aiming while platforming, and a dodge roll that is essential for surviving some of these bullet hell-like encounters. Also, if you beat the game, you unlock 2 new melee-based characters, Raijin and Suhaila, who completely change the game. It's basically hard mode, as now you have to swiftly dodge through enemy gunfire, get in close, and take them out with sword slashes, making it more like a hyper-offensive Strider than a defensive shooter. Guns, Gore, and Cannoli II, 2018. While most run-and-gun games take themselves seriously, Guns, Gore, and Cannoli II is an action-packed parody of the B-action movie industry, full of mobsters, zombies, Nazis, and World War II references. You play as Vinny Cannoli, a mobster who has traveled to Europe during World War II. I particularly enjoy the character physics here, as characters squash, stretch, and swing around with exaggerated movements as they jump, run around, and swing their fists. The movement flows really well with the 360-degree twin-stick shooting, allowing you to somersault over a tank shell while simultaneously headshotting a zombie pilot in midair. The game uses high-definition, hand-drawn 2D sprites that feel like a high-production Flash game. The animations are fluid and expressive, and the environments are well detailed and also highly destructive. Buildings will get destroyed by explosives and send debris flying everywhere, which could also damage you, so you have to be careful. It's surprisingly well designed and high budget, despite how cheap it can look sometimes. Alien Hominid 2004. Speaking of Flash games, Alien Hominid was one of the most iconic Flash games of its era. It was so famous that it became a mascot for Flash games at times. Alien Hominid is perhaps the grandfather of the modern indie scene, capturing a raw, anarchic energy that combined cute with hyper-violent, a trademark of 2000s counterculture. The game is brutally difficult. Just one hit will kill you, and you have limited lives, but that's counterbalanced by how varied the game is. So while you will die multiple times, it's not enough to get overly frustrating or boring. The game thrives on its absurdity. 1 minute you're blasting through a city, and the next you're hijacking a bulldozer, piloting a UFO, or riding on the back of a Yeti while fighting Soviet soldiers. The hand-drawn vector art style allows for fluid, stretchy animations that are pure fun. Since Flash is obsolete, the best way to play this game is through Alien Hominid HD on Steam. Ultracore 2020. This entry is unique because it technically isn't a modern clone at all. Originally titled Hardcore, this game was developed by DICE, the Battlefield devs, in 1994 for the Sega Genesis. It was 99% complete when it was canceled because the publishers decided 2D sprites were dead in the face of the upcoming PlayStation. Yet another reason to hate corporations and publishers. For 25 years, it existed only as a rumor, and that was until it was salvaged from an old hard drive and finally released in 2020. Ultracore follows the design of games like Turrican, where levels are sprawling, maze-like industrial complexes filled with keycards, switches, and secrets, almost like Metroidvania-like. While the level design is vintage 1994, the controls received a modern update. The new release turns the game into a twin-stick shooter, which fixes the stiffness of the original Genesis hardware limitations. While it retains the brutal old-school difficulty as there are no checkpoints and missions, but the smooth controls mean that every death feels like your fault. Iron Meat 2024. If Contra was directed by David Cronenberg, it would be Iron Meat. It creates a world that's overrun by an interdimensional biomass called the Meat, which consumes everything on Earth, both organic and metallic. It's a sarkic, chironic nightmare world where cars have giant teeth and trains are connected by intestines. The gameplay is completely inspired by the NES and the SNES classics, with classic weapons like the spread shot, machine gun, pistol, etc. And you have to constantly stay mobile if you want to survive. The best and most disgusting part of this game are the bosses, who are creatively designed, multi-phase monsters. These aren't typical bullet sponges. They're gruesome, hectic puzzles that evolve as you damage them, shedding their mechanical parts to reveal the raw, bloody organs underneath. The artwork is genuinely creative as hell. I haven't seen biopunk monster designs like this since, well, the next game on this list. Super Cyborg 2015. It's like the love child between Metroid and Contra. Super Cyborg wears its influences on its sleeve, and that was clearly the goal to begin with, as the design, art, limitations, and even the CRT filter makes this game feel like it's a mid-90s retro title instead of something that came out in 2015. Despite the retro shell, it does make two mechanical adjustments that make it playable today. First, it introduces a lock strafe button, allowing you to hold your firing angle while moving, and second, every weapon has a secondary charge shot function. This allows for some tactical play and gives you an offensive buildup when you don't have a clear line of sight to the enemy. The graphics and art here take the Metroid style and push it to the extreme. Here, the infestation completely subsumes entire locations, creating labyrinths of flesh and teeth literally crawling with monsters. It's equal parts disgusting and awesome as you blast your way through them. Wild Dogs 2023. The term love letter game is a big cliche in game reviews, but I do want to say this game is a total love letter to the original Game Boy. You can clearly see it in the gameplay, as it uses a colored 2-bit monochrome art style that is super iconic to the Game Boy. That said, though it does run at a smooth 60 FPS and is capable of things the Game Boy couldn't. It isn't only inspired by Contra, but Contra is the main influence alongside Metroid. The game switches gameplay modes often. You could be playing a pure Contra-like, but then it switches to a Metroid-style gameplay, then a top-down shoot-'em-up, and then a stealth platformer, then into a mech, etc. Despite the simple look, the variety is surprisingly dense. It's a short but dense experience that respects your time and energy, and its goal is to take you on a trip down the Game Boy nostalgia train. Midnight Resistance, 1989. Before the modern twin-stick shooter became a standard, Data East invented its own arcade innovation, the rotary joystick. While Contra forced you to shoot where you looked, with the rotary joystick, you could move in any direction with a twist of your wrist and aim in any other direction. It's a hardware innovation I wish I had gotten to experience for myself. Of course, it wasn't the only innovation this game made, as it also had purchasable weapons. Enemies sometimes dropped red keys, which you had to hurriedly collect before they disappeared, and between stages, you could spend them on a variety of different weapons. You had the basics like machine guns, three-ways, missile launchers, etc., but there were other creative weapons like auto-turret drones and backpacks that shoot homing missiles randomly. Visually, it 100% takes after Contra and expands upon it, starting off as a commando infiltration of a military base and slowly introducing biomechanical monsters until you face the final boss, who's a giant monstrous head. Rapid Reload Gunner's Heaven, 1995. In the mid-90s, Sony of America had a strict policy. 2D is dead, everything must be 3D. Because of this, Western gamers missed out on Rapid Reload, one of the best run-and-gun games on the PS1. Developed by Mediavision, the game is a shameless spiritual successor to Gunstar Heroes. You can clearly see it in the characters, gameplay, environment, and even in the name, Gunner's Heaven. You play as treasure hunters Axel or Ruka, racing against an evil army to collect a powerful treasure. It mimics the grab and use gunplay of Contra, but with a genius twist. The gems you've been collecting aren't just for points. They power the gun you picked up. The guns don't use ammo. They use power, which constantly ticks down. This forces you to play aggressively and to always push forward in order to stay empowered. It also features a grappling hook. And who doesn't love a good grappling hook in games? Gunforce II Geostorm, 1994. If you're a huge Metal Slug fan like I am, then you should be familiar with Gunforce II. It's the last game Irem made before they reformed into the Nazca Corporation and created Metal Slug. This is, in every way that matters, Metal Slug Zero. The set design, the pacing, even the POWs are here, who reward you when you rescue them. Now I say that, but it has a unique game mechanic that its successors didn't use. Independently dual-wielded weapons. You carry two guns simultaneously and you can aim them at different angles. This allows you to fire forward while covering your back, or spray bullets around like a sprinkler, adding a layer of chaos that no other running gun does. The vehicle system is also fully realized here. You can hijack tanks, mechs, helicopters, etc. Although it's literally nothing like Metal Slug and more like a chaotic hardcore, you can easily see the beginnings of Metal Slug here. Gunforce, 1991. I can hear you thinking, wait, if Gunforce 2 is basically Metal Slug Zero, then what does that make Gunforce 1? Well, let me tell you, nothing. Gunforce 1 is absolutely nothing like 2. They might as well be completely different games. The only through line here is the rideable vehicles, but even then, you're not actually controlling the vehicle. Another character is, while your character rides in the back and shoots at enemies. In fact, it's the vehicles that make Gunforce rise head and shoulders above the other Contra-likes, as unlike the scripted vehicle sections in other games, these are often dynamic tools you can hop in and out of at will. It changes the pacing from a frantic infiltration to a churning siege, empowering you better than the super weapons of other games. The art style here is also a game changer, as it marks a move away from the campy 80s commando heroes into a more gritty infantry assault. It's a clear halfway point between Contra and Metal Slug. Cyberlip, 1990. Before Metal Slug dominated the Neo Geo, there was Cyberlip. Released in 1990, this was SNK's first attempt to make a Contra-like running gun. The gameplay features one massive controversial design choice. You cannot shoot diagonal. Unlike Contra, where you can spray bullets in 8 directions, Cyberlip locks you to horizontal and vertical firing only. That means positioning is very important. Although you'll be spending a lot more time not shooting, just dodging attacks until you can get yourself into a spot where you can actually hit back. It also features a hang mechanic predating Contra 3. allowing you to swing from pipes and drop down onto enemies. Art-wise, it shamelessly rips off Terminator and Aliens as you fight endoskeletons, facehuggers, and the titular boss, Cyberlip, who's a giant CRT screen that screams at you. There's also the ending, which spooked a lot of arcade goers at the time, but I'll leave that up to you to find out. Dinosaurs for Hire, 1993. This is peak 90s. Dinosaurs in leather jackets wielding sci-fi guns? I just described every 90 kid's dream game right there. Based on the Malibu comic series Dinosaurs for Hire, lets you play as Archie, a T-Rex in a leather jacket, Lorenzo, a Triceratops in a Hawaiian shirt, or Reese, a Stegosaurus with a mohawk. It's a loud, ridiculous, and surprisingly competent run-and-gun shooter. They had a lot of fun making this game, and that's clear with the melee attacks as they utilize the dinosaur anatomy to use savage punches and tail whips to take out close quarters enemies. It's a game that is pure, awesome fun, and the Sega Genesis could barely run it, but it runs fairly smooth somehow. The game constantly breaks the fourth wall. It opens with the dinosaurs arguing with the game's actual developer, Tom Mason, about their contract and the game's budget. If you want a game that's absurd and pure fun, Dinosaurs for Hire is a must-play. The Contra-like subgenre is often defined by its difficulty, but as these 15 games prove, it is also defined by the creativity bred by its limitations. From the biomechanical horrors of Iron Meat to the comedic chaos of Dinosaurs for Hire, developers have again and again found ways to reinvent genres to be better than their originals.